Welcome to the Socialist Shelf, my friends. You may notice very quickly that it's just me today, Jacob. Just by myself, just straight chilling. Here's the thing. We had a couple guests fall through, no big deal. We are going to have a hell of an episode for you later this week, a little late, but we wanted to release something on Tuesday just to make sure we continue to have some good shelf content. And honestly, just so I could be a little, let's say, shameless, let's say, because as shelfers will know, I do have a book coming out in December called They Called Her Rebel. It is now open for pre orders. And I thought, as a little treat for y'all, or maybe for me, or, who knows, maybe for all of us, I'd read the prologue and first chapter of They Called Her Rebel. And if this interests you at all, or, if it doesn't, but like me in any capacity, would really appreciate you pre-ordering, posting about the book, letting folks know. It is a fantasy novel about socialist revolution. It is a fantasy novel about organizing. It is about a world that's not really that different from ours, despite the magic that they have, despite the wizards with shotguns, despite the orcs. Really, there is a lot we hold in common with the people of Quitron, which I think you will see if you read this book. Bonus, you have lesbians who can throw balls of exploding energy and also can see souls. So that's pretty cool too if you go for that kind of thing. And if you don't, hard to imagine why you dig this show at all. So without further ado, I'm going to read this and then y'all just get ready because we got a great episode coming later this week. Prologue. 4 days ago, an unimportant man died. A tumor killed him. The sort of tumor that only killed unimportant men. He'd ignored that pain in his stomach until he fell down. Someone else had to finish washing and scrubbing his allotted windows and floors for the day. Now he was dead. His daughter was close to joining him. Ilaria lay on the floor of Bluff's bar. She smelled sweat and beer and blood. Someone was kicking her in the ribs, in the knee, in the stomach, in the throat, in the ribs again, the ribs again, the ribs again. Ilaria's vision was a pool of violent, clashing color, yellow all around her, cheering, jeering, booing, screaming, drinking voices. The woman kicking her was red, and bright orange exploded as her foot struck. It looked beautiful from so far outside her own body. The kicks stopped, but the noise didn't. Somebody yelled something about dragging her away. Metal-tipped boots slammed the wooden floor. The crackling electric sound of misnet chatter. Somebody grabbed her by the hair. Ilaria couldn't lose. She didn't remember the reason she couldn't lose. But she couldn't. It wasn't allowed. Had to keep going. The world would end if she lost. It would wreck everything. Ilaria swung blindly. Somebody jabbed her with something that felt hot, then felt like nothing. Nothing felt like anything. It was time for some unconsciousness. Somewhere, far away, the roots of her hair hurt. When Ilaria woke up tomorrow, that hair would be gone. Gone with all her money, her freedom, and the smell of beer. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, her father was already gone. Her last clear thought was that he wouldn't be there when she woke up. Chapter 1, Ilaria's remarkably depressing schedule. 5 to 5:15 a.m., wake up, get dressed, prepare for day. Ilaria slept in bunk 2, 131B. Bunk 2, 131B was the uncomfortable middle cot of a three-tiered bunk bed. The three-tiered bunk bed was the 131st bunk bed in the row. The row was the second of 10 that ran along the length of Shelter 2, 526C. Ilaria called Shelter 2, 526C by another name, the Debtor Warehouse. Ilaria woke to the sound of blaring electronic horns. She usually sat straight up and hit her head. She always groaned. Ilaria swung her feet over empty air and dropped to the cold cement floor. Sometimes she collided with one of her bunkmates. They grumbled and moved on. Nothing to discuss. The room was gray, dismal. Long lines of metallic bunks mirrored the long lines of concrete buildings outside. Floating SAR spheres patrolled the crowd, playing one of 6 pre-selected pop songs. Every 10 bunks, a slight break for a row of doorless, concrete toilet stalls. 10 toilets for every 300 prisoners. 200 chromal fee for extra latrinal urination. 500 chromal fee for extra latrinal defecation. The line waiting outside the stalls hurled abuse at those using them as they rushed their business in shame. Ilaria rented 2 pairs of gray pants and shirts. At night, she used them as a pillow. She put one on, swished with some mouthwash stolen from the company's store, and watered outside with the others. 5:15 to 6 a.m. Breakfast. All across Due Diligence Credit Camp, DDCC, weary workers made their way to identical community centers for whatever slop they'd pretend was edible today. Ilaria went to Community Center 526C, a hulking mess hall with hundreds of long gray tables with backless benches. SAR spheres patrolled, playing one of 6 pre-selected pop songs. If you paid for a better meal plan, you sat at a hot food table. Ilaria sat at a cold food table. Once she accidentally sat in the wrong place. Her collar gave her a zap and charged a 100 chromal convenience fee. Speaking of collars, Ilaria's stuck out. Just about everyone here opted to pay the fee for an expensive, lightweight collar. These were little more than loose hanging chains. Ilaria wore an ugly, heavy thing of cold steel or iron or something. Her head always hurt. Her skin always chafed. 6 to 6:25 a.m. Transportation to work. At 6 a.m., every SAR sphere stopped whichever of the 6 pre-selected pop songs it was playing for an announcement in a cheery woman's voice. Workers, to your transports. Have a productive day. Workers, to your transports. Have a productive day. The transports were a bunch of steely floating chariots that reminded Ilaria of trash cans. She shoved into transport 17, 526C. It was packed, barely room to breathe. The transport was windowless. 7 minutes of flying, 5 minutes of dragging herself out of the sweating, foul-breathed mass. Ilaria arrived at Prosperity Insurance Tower. 6:25 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Report to desk, complete morning tasks. Prosperity Insurance Tower was a 20-story building in central DDCC. Its entrance was the only visually appealing thing Ilaria saw in a day. The lobby was slightly decorated. A few plants, a floor of marble, a sprawling wood desk, and 10 crystalline elevator tubes reserved exclusively for the 103 free employees who worked in the upper levels. Ilaria worked on the 4th floor. She took the stairs. Floor 4 was lifelessness itself. The drab gray nightmare in a town of drab gray nightmares, the epicenter. It was a single open-plan office space, nothing but rows of identical desks stacked to bursting with sheaves of documents in manila folders. A couple of workers rented cheap figurines or plastic plants to add some color. Ilaria didn't. The lights overhead never stopped flickering. The gray-clad workers didn't talk much as they plopped down in their foldable plastic chairs and set themselves to numerical drudgery. Ilaria's desk was shoved up too closely between an old man with poor hygiene and a nervous, red-haired elf who constantly tapped his fingers and smacked his lips in bursts of anxious energy. She tried to make conversation with both, but just got raunchy jokes from the first and halting one-word answers from the second. Now they hardly talked at all, except when she cursed the old man for accidentally brushing up against her a dozen too many times in a single morning. Ilaria's job was to read through folders filled with stacks of complaints from dissatisfied customers who didn't receive full insurance payouts, also known as partially accepted claim complaints, PACCs. Ilaria went through these PACCs and marked down all internal inconsistencies and procedural errors, then wrote up detailed and largely redundant reports on the history of the claim. By the afternoon, Ilari was required to perfectly complete every document in that morning's folders. Every assignment left incomplete would be thrown atop the pile of afternoon assignments. It wasn't hard, really. Ilaria was a decent reader and learned quickly to write in the lifeless prosperity insurance style. She just had to blink hard to keep her eyes from glazing over and not think too closely about the money she was robbing from mostly deserving claim filers. 12:30 to 1 p.m., lunch break. Attendants, also collared and gray suited, entered the room at 12:30 p.m. They pushed carts laden with packed lunches, 15 crumbles each, a ludicrous price for a small bag of dried fruit or a stale sandwich adorned with history's thinnest slice of unidentifiable meat. Most people paid for it anyway. Ilaria didn't. She sat in silence while everyone ate around her. Occasionally, the old man to her right waved a piece of dried fruit in her face, saying he'd trade it for a smooch. She ignored him. Now and then, one of their supervisors set up a misnet projector as a reward for good behavior. This allowed the workers to watch some random rerun of one show or another while they ate, or, in Ilaria's case, waited in silence. The projector was never properly calibrated. The actors should have appeared as water vapor holograms. Instead, they appeared as wet, misshapen blobs. The sound came through okay most of the time, but that didn't matter. The jokes were rarely funny. 1 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. afternoon shift. Afternoon shift was the same as morning shift, just worse. The letters on the page started to blur around 2 or 3 p.m. The battle against eye glazing intensified. Most days, their department manager walked in at around 4 p.m. to check up on his favorite team. He was no debt slave, but a free contractor lured to the DDCC on the promise of cheap lodging and high salary. He was a tall, gold-headed elf who wore shiny silver shirts and tight-fitting pants of bright blue or red. He grinned a lot, looking over shoulders, slapping backs, and pretending that he had a real job. "Reports looking tippity there, real top of the notch," he told Ilaria, nearly knocking off the folder full of papers. "Not bad, solid number crunching and all that. Just the kind of thing we do here. Good and sharpy work." He walked off to bother someone else, snapping his fingers to no tune in particular. Every day, Ilaria wondered if this was it. If she died and been cast down to the seventh realm. If this was the shift that would last eternally. Never was. The clock always managed to meander to 6:30 p.m. and a woman's voice echoed over the speaker system. "Attention, Prosperity Insurance employees. Please turn in your work and file out of the building in an orderly fashion. If you did not complete today's assignments, Prosperity Insurance gladly extends to you a grace period of 11 hours and 45 minutes, starting immediately. Have a productive evening." 6:30 to 7 p.m. Return to Community Center. It was the morning in reverse. Ilaria left Prosperity Insurance Tower on the hated shuttle, arrived at Community Center 526C, and ate a dreary meal. 7 to 11 p.m. Free time. Ilaria ate her cold sludge slowly. She had nothing better to do. Most prisoners scarfed down their food and rushed to the city's outskirts for a few hours of intoxicated relief. Drugs, prostitutes, music. The outskirts had it all, albeit of poor quality and high cost to one's debt. It was tempting. Every meaningless day made Ilaria dream of vodka more. She longed for music that wasn't one of 6 pre-selected synthetic pop songs. Her stomach rumbled for sugary food, and as for the prostitutes, well, she couldn't deny it had been too long. No adding to the debt for anything. After finishing her meal, Ilaria marched back to Shelter 2, 526C, to get some exercise. Her first week, she tried going for a jog, but after a couple laps, her collar flashed and a SAR sphere announced in an automated voice that there was a 10 crumble fee for using public streets for recreational cardiovascular exertion. After literally weeping with rage, she decided to keep the exercise by her bedside. It wasn't convenient without equipment or space, and she received plenty of judgmental stares, but Ilaria managed. She attempted push-ups, ran tiny laps around her bed, maintained a squat till she toppled, and beat the piss out of her own shadow. The final collapse onto the bed, gangly body burning, was usually the only moment of happiness in a day. It reminded Ilaria that she was still breathing, still alive. 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Lights out. At 10:50 p.m., the SAR spheres gave a little whoop whoop sound that announced, "Workers, please be aware that lights out is in 10 minutes. Return to your bed if you do not wish to incur a fine. Have a productive sleep." Many people stayed out well past 11 p.m. Once you were drunk, 50 chromals an hour didn't sound all that bad. Ilaria never broke curfew, though her mind stayed active long past lights out. Colors bounced around her closed eyelids, the dance of a psychic kaleidoscope. Eventually, Ilaria managed to drift off into an uncomfortable sleep. At 5 a.m., she awoke to the sound of blaring electronic horns. And yeah, that's the prologue and first chapter of They Called Her Rebel. As you maybe can guess, this person is not pleased with her conditions, and a lot of other people are not pleased with their conditions as well. Maybe, just maybe, they can link up and pull something off. Maybe a rebellion, some revolution, some good old fashioned worker power. Who knows? Who knows? We're gonna have to find out. But would really appreciate folks pre-ordering or talking about the book or requesting your local library pre-order it if you're in tough financial straits, or even if you're not. um, this book, I put a lot of myself into it, and I care deeply about it, about the characters, about the message, about the world. And I really hope other people can find some kind of joy and meaning and emotion and feeling in this book. Even a fraction of what I feel would be, I think, pretty tremendous. So, as always, really appreciate you shelfers. Really, genuinely, y'all mean the world to us, and we love doing this every single week. We have so much fun. Um, and we sincerely appreciate you. So sorry there is not a full episode today. Give us a couple days. Promise some good stuff is coming down the pipe. Y'all are not going to want to miss what's coming up. And, you know, while I have you here, if you want to go give us some reviews on social media, on our like podcast apps, or you want to like repost us on social media or whatever, honestly, would be great to continue growing this platform. We have new people find us every week or two. We don't grow massively, but people trickle in, and I love it when new people find us, when they send us messages like, "I'm listening to the back catalog," and asking about this or that, or saying, "Oh, I understand the riffs now about the president is missing," or this, that, and the other. So, yeah, folks, really appreciate you. And, read some good books. Hopefully, They Called a Rebel come December. And organize yourself, whatever that means for you and your locality and your place in life. Thank y'all. Have a wonderful morning, day, evening, night, whatever it is there. See you, comrades.
Thank you for listening to Socialist Shelf Radio.